So, first off, who am I? My name is Mirabai Knight. I'm based in New York City, and I'm a professional stenographer for deaf and hard of hearing college students and professionals. About 6 years ago, I got really frustrated with my proprietary steno software. It was like $4,000, $700 a year for upgrades, really buggy, bloated, terrible DRM. It was just driving me nuts, right? So I decided there needed to be an open source alternative to steno, professional, real-time computer-connected stenography. So I figured no one else was going to write it if I didn't do it myself. I tried to find a Python tutor, and I was extremely lucky to happen upon Joshua Lifton, PhD, recently of the MIT Media Lab, who started out tutoring me in Python, and then got so wrapped up in the project that he basically came to me and said, listen, I'll develop this for you. You can pay me whatever you can afford, but I want to make this happen. So he took over the project, has been coding it ever since, and then when he had to sort of tone down the amount of time he could give to it because of his full-time job, Heskey Fisher, whose day job is at Google, took over the project. So I've been just ridiculously fortunate to get these incredible top coders to help me with the project. Also, we've got about 200 users who weigh in, bug testing, giving input. It's been a really cool project. It's been around for about 3 years now, and it's going strong. What is stenography? It's a phonetic mnemonic text input system. It's been around since about 1911, and to be a professional stenographer like me, you basically need a speed of 240 words per minute with 99.9% accuracy. That means an error or omission about every 1,000 words or 4 pages. You can see this old-fashioned steno machine obviously doesn't hook up to a computer. That's from around 1930. It costs about $50. This much bigger sort of split ergonomic steno machine, which is the one I use professionally, costs $4,000. But this one down here, which just looks like a regular QWERTY keyboard, except for some mysterious rectangular keys pasted onto it, costs about $50 for the keyboard and $20 for our laser-cut steno keys, which we sell through the Plover store. That is the main innovation of Plover, that we're basically cutting the hardware cost from $4,000 down to $50. But why should you care? You're all developers. I'm not. I'm still trying to learn Python, but it's a hard slog. And when you think of stenographers, you probably think of, old-fashioned ladies with buns in their hair, like sitting in the courtroom going, la 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 la. Why should you care? It's not interesting, it's not cool, it's not useful. But you're wrong. Steno is good for a ridiculous amount of things. It's incredibly elegant, useful, efficient. I won't really go into all the details of these 6 things here. I wrote a series of essays detailing each one of them. Speed, wearability, ergonomics. If you're interested in them, check out the link from my PyCon speakers page. But I'll go briefly into paying work and accessibility for people with disabilities. Mostly I'll focus on the last one, which is fluency and efficiency of text entry, which is why you guys might care. So this speech will have sort of a 2-pronged approach. First, I'm going to give you the hard sell to try to convince you that you, as a coder, should learn steno to write code, blog posts, emails, novels, whatever you want to do with it, that it's incredibly useful and that you personally should learn it. That might work for some of you, probably won't work for all of you. So at the end of that section, I'll go on to sort of talking about why you might care about steno being out there in the world in general, even if you don't personally learn it, why it's really important that other people have the opportunity to use it. This is just the steno alphabet. I'm not going to go into details, but my slides are up on the page, so you can check this out at your leisure later. The steno keyboard has 22 keys. Basically, it's a 2-dimensional syllabic input system, as opposed to the QWERTY system, where obviously you take any word, break it down into its component letters, and then type out each letter one by one. With steno, you input each syllable in a single stroke, though sometimes you can actually get more syllables per stroke, depending on the word. handles the initial consonants of the word, the right hand handles the final consonants, and the thumbs handle the vowels in the middle. There's no space bar. Each stroke is submitted after all of the keys are released. And most words can be written phonetically. One example here is straps. You can look on the steno keyboard. S-T-R-A-P-S. You get all of those together in one stroke, and it comes out straps. Very intuitive. Now, Plover is unique, as opposed to all the other proprietary steno software, in that it is essentially a keyboard emulator. Most proprietary software is a word processor, and if you want to interact with the rest of the OS, it's in this very sort of awkward sandbox system with lots of delays and convoluted things. It's very inconvenient. But Plover is stripped down and designed just to let you interact with your system as if you were using a QWERTY keyboard. So for an example, if you wanted to do a two-syllable word, you start out with pie, P long I, pie, and you get the word pie, P-I-E. Then you add on thon, and suddenly Plover will delete the I and the E of pie and send out Y-T-H-O-N to get Python. Very simple. As I mentioned, there are some words which you can write in a single stroke, even if they're 10 letters and 4 syllables long, such as deplorable, D-P-L-O-R-B-L, deplorable, peripheral, P-R-I-F-R-L, peripheral. I'm going to, oh, yes, question? Go back to deplorable? Yes. Are you confused about why there's no D on the left side of the keyboard? Yes. I guess I should have mentioned that since the steno keyboard only has 22 keys, the letters that don't appear are produced by specific chords. So in this case, TK is D, HR is L, and down here, EU is I. You can see that in more detail if you look at the steno alphabet that I posted earlier. So I'm going to show you an example of me inputting a very small snippet from Codecademy, which I'm trying to use to learn Python, with steno. But just to keep in mind while you're watching this, it took 143 keystrokes to do the same amount of code in QWERTY, whereas it took 54 keystrokes to do it in steno. All right, let me rewind here. Down below, you can see the phonetic equivalent of the steno that I'm writing. Pretty simple. All right, let me go back here. Right. Another big advantage of this two-dimensional versus one-dimensional text input system is that you can have mnemonic hooks for all of your words and commands. So I'm a Vim user, and yeah, Vim, woo. And you know, most of these sort of one-letter commands in Vim are sort of intuitive. You know, back is go back one word. That makes sense, right? But you know, R is used, say if you want to record a macro, right? R is used for replace a letter. M is used for mark my spot. So you have to have these weird convoluted things like record macro with a Q. It doesn't really work because you only have one letter to sort of hang your mnemonic hook on. Whereas with steno, since you have an entire syllable per stroke, you can do really complex commands like glurch for launch browser and perform a Google search, or quarn, short for quarantine, which, you know, when I make an error in Python, or in Plover, I can cut that highlighted text and append it to a document that I review later to help fix bugs in Plover's orthographic system. Now, I might have convinced some of you that steno is cool and useful and efficient and awesome and you want to learn it. I might not have, but I want to make the larger case that steno is really important to have in the world, the altruistic argument. In this country, there are 35 million people with hearing loss, and about 2% of those know sign language, so 98% can only really be helped by real-time captioning. There's only 400 certified captioners like me in this country, and most of them are near retirement age. Plus, there are 3 to 8 million people who can't use their voices to speak, and steno is virtually the only technology that would allow them to converse with people they know in a truly real-time way, at true conversational speeds, as opposed to tapping things out, you know, in a pictographic system that's very slow and awkward. Unfortunately, the reason why there are so few stenographers and why so many of them are so old is because the only way to learn steno these days is through for-profit trade schools that are really of scams. They'll let anybody in. They'll cost a huge amount of money in tuition plus buying the machine, buying the software, and the national dropout rate is 85%. Because honestly, most of the people going to steno school don't have other prospects and aren't really well suited to learn the system. Most people can reach about 140 to 160 words per minute in steno in, I would say, 3 to 6 months. But getting that extra additional speed from 160 to 225, which is graduation speed, can take 2 to 6 years. The problem is that we currently don't have any amateurs or hobbyists or tinkerers or anyone who wants to pick up steno for fun, for free, or at least low cost, considering this $50 system that we've got. It's like if the only way you could learn guitar is if you had to go to music school and buy, a jewel-encrusted professional level guitar, that you had to go through a 4-year program before you could even use it. If there's no amateurs, there's no future for the program. And that's what's happening with steno. It's disappearing. People aren't using this technology because they're locked into this proprietary system. That's why Plover now is, totally free software. The hardware is really much more affordable than the $4,000 proprietary software. And our next sort of endeavor is going to be trying to raise money for a video game system that will teach Plover in an addictive way, kind of, retro-style arcade games, because gamification is a big buzzword in learning these days, but for steno, it's really, really perfect. You start slow, you get faster, you start with simple words, you sort of build up your word hoard as you go along. It's almost like an RPG plus a platformer combined. So we're hoping that as the steno community grows, we'll be able to get more people in to help develop this system of video games, and then the steno community hopefully will just explode. There's a bunch of resources online if you go to pleversteno.org. User groups, forums, mailing lists, all sorts of stuff. And you can teach yourself steno on your own, try it out. And I'll also be happy to answer any questions at this point. More demos? Okay. Or questions. Well, first I'll ask for questions. If there are no more questions, I'll give you more demos. Oh.
So, I switched to Colmac this year, which is just a different keyboard layout.
Okay.
It's more... or better.
Okay.
Whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And I found that I accidentally locked myself out of everybody else's computers.
Yeah.
Because I can't type on other people's computers anymore.
Yeah.
Which kind of sucks. I don't know, it's the jury's still out.
Sure.
I wondered if you experienced this at all with steno on, you sit down at a library computer.
I mean, it is a disadvantage. It's annoying having to switch back to QWERTY. We're currently looking at possible commercial solutions for low-cost, very portable steno machine that you can just plug into any computer and it'll work as a QWERTY keyboard. It sort of emulate a QWERTY keyboard without having to install any software, which I think will, it's annoying having to carry a keyboard around, but that might be a sort of compromise solution.
Since Comac is still the same shape as QWERTY, it overrode QWERTY in my brain.
Right, yeah.
It replaced it. Does steno do that to you, or do you...
No, I'm still pretty good with QWERTY.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just annoying.
Hi. I'm an iPhone 5 user, and I always have a problem with the QWERTY keyboard on it. Really hard to use to send email and so forth. Do you think the steno will be a good application for iPhone 5 for regular users for the faster typing?
Well, because it's a two-handed system, it's not too easy to transfer. I hope eventually there will be a wearable solution where basically you have the keyboard, on your pants, and you can just walk around and input. I mean, I think this really sort of rises and falls depending on whether Google Glass takes off or sinks like a stone. If people start having wearable options and then get frustrated with the input methods available, I think steno could be a really good solution to that. But if wearable computing is really just relegated back to the 90s, who knows? I don't think that it's going to be usable for the next few years, unfortunately.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Sure.
So as a Vim addict, I'm glad to hear that you are one too, and because Dvorak was always a no-go for me because the colon's in the wrong place, and the HJ keys are a no-go. So how do you handle that? And also maybe you could address how you handle things like parens and square brackets. Things of that nature.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me put this back up again because I use both parentheses and square brackets in this demo. Basically, for me, the sort of iconic Python double parentheses with nothing in them, I just defined as parens. I write it out as parens. If I want an open parentheses, I do paren, and if I want to close one, I do parent. Brackets are bricked and bricked. It's actually fairly intuitive once you get used to them. And the nice thing about steno is that your fingers never stray from the home row, so you're not doing that sort of tippy-tappy thing with the QWERTY or even the Dvorak keyboard. You just stay there, and you make all of the possible combinations that you can with the 22 keys underneath your fingers.
But so then moving around is also chording now instead of using like HJ keys, HJKL keys for moving around?
Yeah, you do them sort of like this. Oh, no, I still just use regular Vim mappings. Like if I want to go back a word, I still write B. I just write B on the steno keyboard, which is PW plus asterisk.
Become a fully trained steno.
Get really fast, yeah.
How much time would it take to get faster than you are as a QWERTY?
My estimate is it's probably around 2 to 3 months, depending on how much time you put into it and how quickly you pick it up, but not that much.
Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Probably about the same time as learning Dvorak, honestly.
Do you know anything about the state of the art for languages other than English? So, for example, I'm from Russia, so I would have to type Cyrillics if I were to use this thing.
Yes, this is about foreign languages in steno. We actually do have a number of people on the Plover user group from other countries. There's one from Poland. I think there's a Russian American who's interested in using steno in Russian.
Polish uses the Latin alphabet, and
right, I know.
uses Cyrillic.
Yeah, I know. No, I know.
Yeah.
But it's basically Plover can output anything in the Unicode character set. And I think there are stenographic theories for other languages. Some of them you might have to start from scratch, but I think for most European languages there already is an established stenographic theory that you would just have to import into the Plover system. So there's a lot of potential there. Not many people are using it at this point.
I'm just curious whether you would have enough keys because Russian has 33 letters rather than 26. And
quite possibly, since it's phonetic. I believe there is a pre-existing Russian stenographic system, but I'm not completely positive.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Hi, I was just wondering, so it looked in the picture like the $50 keyboard that you were talking about, it looks like a normal keyboard.
Not
so
quite.
Are there hardware differences?
There are, yeah. The main thing is that it needs to have N key rollover. Because most keyboards won't accept chords of more than like 2 keys at a time. So the one we use, the cheapest N key rollover keyboard is the Microsoft Sidewinder X4, which is like a gaming keyboard.
So sorry, follow up. So is it possible to get like other keyboards other than that $50 one, or are they all more expensive anyway?
They're all more expensive than that.
Okay.
Yeah, like the Magis Touch costs about $120, works great. But nothing cheaper than $50, unfortunately.
How did you come up with the name?
actually, let me show you the logo. If you can see this little guy, a plover is a sort of a wading bird. I came up with it for two reasons. First of all, it's a two-syllable, six-letter word that you can play in one stroke on the steno keyboard. And secondly, I like that it's a phonetic system, but plover is a non-phonetic word. It's sort of perverse that way. But you can see on his little wing there, the dark brown patches spell out plover, because his little wing is a steno keyboard, so P-L-O-F-R spells out plover.
You mentioned just a few moments ago that you type bracket and paren by typing combinations of like the sound like bracket and paren. What do you do when you actually want to type the word bracket?
Oh, well, that's yet another definition. Basically, for the actual character bracket, I take out the vowels, so it's sort of brooked and brooked. But for the word bracket, I just write bracket, which is one stroke again.
So this is really cool.
Yeah.
My question is, you mentioned that you have like a personal dictionary.
Yes.
How is that formed, and sort of what's the interface for that?
Sure.
And I guess the other question is, let's assume that this comes to dominate like the hacker world.
I hope so. That's what I'm going for.
How would we do interoperability if we all have a personal dictionary basically to use with this?
Yeah, well, I mean, that goes back to the question of what you have to do when you're using someone else's computer. But, you know, the dictionary is inherent. Each stenographer has their own dictionary. And I was going to record a demo of using the steno keyboard to define a new word, but it was a little bit clumsy. It's actually working pretty well now. It's one of our new features, and it's really useful. But yeah, I mean, you would have to have some way of transporting your dictionary. But it's, you know, it's like a 4 meg text file. It's not that hard to, you know, you can use thumb drive, or if we do get this, you know, like $200 solution of just a plug-in keyboard that works with any computer, the dictionary will be on there.
And to define those words, you, I assume, do another chord that says, I'm going to define a new word.
Correct.
Here it is.
Yep. Yeah, it's actually pretty seamless.
I used to work at a chord reporting firm, actually, so this all sounds too familiar.
Yeah.
And reading the description, this will be great for a real-time, you know, chord reporting application. Do you have plans for expanding this in the future in a commercial way?
No, I want Clever to remain open source. Honestly, I'm not really interested in breaking into the court reporting market because I don't do court reporting and I find that stuff incredibly tedious. So the $4,000 proprietary software already handles the court reporting, but I do, you know, real-time stenography for the deaf and hard of hearing.
At 240 words per minute, you'd think you'd be a great candidate for the mud gaming community. Have you talked to these people yet?
No, actually, that's a really good idea. Yeah, I'd love for there to be like a text-based RPG that teaches you steno. I think that would be a really good application and you know, a lot cheaper to develop than a big graphics extravaganza. Yeah, I mean, right now the typing game community are pretty excited about Clever, but that's a pretty small niche in the total online gaming world, so we'll see what happens. Demos? Alright, I got a whole playlist here. Sorry about that. See, I gave the exact same presentation in New York City, and I didn't have enough time. I think I must have just gone on adrenaline this time.
Sorry, may I ask another quick question?
Sure.
So how does it work with the thumbs? So you have to, so the vowels are on the thumbs and you have to press either one or two keys at the same time with your thumb, right?
Exactly, yes. Yep, that's exactly right.
It's convenient to press like two keys at once.
It is, yeah. I mean, the steno keyboard's designed that way. Basically, the footprint of the steno keyboard is very small. It's basically the size of a typical hand,
That makes sense, yeah.
So here is a short demo of me using the Philco Magistouch that I mentioned earlier, which is about $120 QWERTY keyboard. To write in Plover, with the corresponding keys that I'm pressing. Not sure how visible that is. Should have made it bigger. Let me give you another one. Here is the online typing game that I mentioned. It's called Type Racer. I'm not actually. I get too nervous. The guy who's the world record holder on Type Racer is a QWERTY typist, but he's just, I know, it's ridiculous, right? Honestly, I get too nervous and I get sort of hung up on it. I'm pretty close. Like, I think I beat him in several races, but he's just really focused. But I certainly beat Jumbo here. Jimbo, whoever it was. And here's another application that I can't really give you the benefit of the voice particularly. Anyway, that's a small example of how people can use Plover to speak if they can't speak with their voices, whether due to surgery or whether they have, congenital malformations or whatever, which is a surprising number of people, and it's very difficult for them to converse in a conversational pace without a real-time system like this. Another question?
How big is the dictionary you use?
My dictionary is currently about 106,000 words, though there are dictionaries that are 200,000. It's a good starter dictionary. I use my own dictionary as the sort of Plover default dictionary, which people can then download and alter and add to at their heart's delight.
I was wondering if it's not too deep of a hole to fall into. How do I ask this? Is it emulating an input source, essentially? So as far as your computer is concerned, these are the letters that you typed?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so, and then it's designed to have different types of output for different systems that expect things, or
No, it's just a QWERTY keyboard emulator.
Okay.
It sends out, you write the letter in one stroke, but then it's the one that does the work of converting those into individual letters. And then in the example that I showed where I wrote pi and it said pi, and then I wrote thon, it deleted IE and then sent out THON. So it's basically using delete tokens and send tokens.
Okay, so it is actually like piping out a couple of backspaces.
Exactly.
And then, okay.
Yeah, so it's really transferable to just about every program.
How would you compare QWERTY to steno for hand strain? Because it looks so elegant and
Yes,
just like
absolutely. It's something I didn't go into too much, but the ergonomic argument is a really powerful one. I started out as a QWERTY transcriptionist, and I could type around 110 words per minute, but after doing that for 8 hours a day, my wrists, my hands were just killing me, and I was worried. At the time, I was in steno school, and I was worried that I would just jeopardize my entire career by, burning out my hands. And as soon as I switched to steno, it was miraculous. I mean, I do use the split ergonomic steno keyboard, but it's much more like playing the piano than playing a typewriter. You're stroking, and then you can relax, and then you stroke, and then you can relax. So you're not constantly moving your fingers without, any cessation, and you're not keeping that tension in your fingers. So I can type, at around 200 words per minute for 8 hours without a break, and I don't feel any pain at all.
I was just curious if there are any special cases where it breaks, like words like there, and there, or anagrams, or like is
Yeah,
there anywhere?
homonyms are handled really well. I mean, you have to sort of either make up or learn the specific rules of differentiating them, but yeah, I don't have any issues with homonyms particularly.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Hey, I just thought of another one. So, you know, like when you learn a totally new skill,
Yeah.
right? There's sort of a point, like a ramp-up period where you like have to devote yourself and be disciplined learning the skill, and there's a point where like you're hooked,
Right.
And like from that point on, it's all coasting. It's all like, okay, you want to learn more of the language, you want to learn more of the vocabulary.
Yeah.
So if you were speaking to a person who's like grown up on QWERTY, like. What does it take to get to the, like, okay, now you're obsessed, like, you've got to learn how to do this point?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it is quite variable. There is a fairly steep initial learning curve. You can type really simple phonetic words like cat and straps once you learn the QWERTY keyboard. But there's a certain point where the frustration sets in and you're writing words that you think are phonetic and they don't necessarily translate the way you want them to. We're definitely working to make that much easier, having sort of a prompting system that if you type out a word letter by letter, it'll show you the equivalent steno chord for it. Or, the video game, I think, will really help people to sort of just put in concentrated sort of flow state work into it and then suddenly wake up and be like, I've been doing this for 2 hours and now I can actually write this email without ever getting frustrated or having to stop or having to look up a word specifically. So right now Plover is not particularly user-friendly, but I think it will become more so.
How do keys such as Control, Alt, Meta, and Shift work?
Again, they're just defined in the dictionary. We have a special command syntax. So, Alt is Alt.
How do you combine, say, Control and Shift? Is that, again, Alt, Shift?
Well, I don't believe that right now we're able to sort of have a, hold down shift while I write the next word, but you can sort of nest the commands in a single dictionary definition. So like, for me, Alt-Tab is tablet. So that'll just do Alt-Tab. But I think eventually we do want to implement sort of like a sticky key situation where if you write one, you'll know that the next one that's written will be combined with the previous.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, I saw your demo where there was stenographic input and the output was valid Python calls of functions and so on. I didn't understand how that works because are you using pre-canned special trigger, or are you really freely programming with brackets and braces and curly things and all the punctuation?
The thing that's really great about Python, as you guys know, is that it's very readable. It doesn't use that much specific syntax or punctuation that isn't common in English speech. So, you can see a lot of these things are just simple English words. Original is org, lower is lower, word first, print first, all of these commands. I did define raw input as ripped, which was raw underscore input parentheses, open quote. So that's a single stroke for that specific Python command, but that's something that you'll use, all the time. So it's worth defining it once and then being able to do it in a single stroke. Similarly for variables, if you come up with a specific variable that you know you're going to be writing in your program many times over, you can just take a second, define it as a one-stroke mnemonic syllable, and then every time you reference that variable in the future, you just have to do that one stroke to get it.
Okay, I was just wondering whether I can write a new program which is not yet defined and I have certain identifiers which are new and all of that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll try it. Thank you.
Yes, it's pretty simple. Anything, again, basically you can output anything that the QWERTY keyboard can. So you just have to know what strokes correspond to which letters or punctuation or whatever you're using.
Do you have any issues with screen?
I'm sorry?
Screen.
Control A. Control left, right, screen.
Oh.
For you SSH something and you start screen and then you have multiple screen sessions on it?
It hasn't really come up. I imagine it would be handled similarly to the way one handles it using just a QWERTY keyboard.
But there's a lot of meta key combinations that one uses with screen.
Okay.
Like in parallel, where you're doing Control A and something else all at the same time on QWERTY.
You can nest those in any dictionary definition.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you do like two different chords then?
I mean, I sort of like to see see it at a higher level, where if there's a particular command, you would just sort of assign a mnemonic hook to that command, and then assign that to whatever meta key combinations are necessary to produce it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I know the answer to this question, but there's no way to get this to work on a laptop right now.
Unfortunately, no. There are no N-key rollover laptops. It's really frustrating because I would pay any amount to get one, but currently, no.
Hi.
Hi.
Are you familiar with transcriptionist?
Yes, I was a transcriptionist for many years.
Oh, okay. So how does this compare to like their crazy macro systems?
It's much better, much more efficient.
Cool.
Yeah, with transcriptionists, mostly they use like text expansion systems where they have to write, the first 2 or 3 letters of a word and then it'll sort of expand out.
Exactly.
But with steno, most of those you can do in one stroke, so it's still almost triple the efficiency. Yes.
So thank you for captioning the ADA Initiative's latest video.
Absolutely.
I didn't realize how lucky we were to get one of the 400. But I just imagine that when you have a very, you can hear code in your head when you're writing these things. I was wondering if you could record a video of you speaking your code, or maybe speak it right now.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's okay, so let me... This one. Alright, this is a illustration of how Plover can be used to speak at a null curveable pace. You can see that I'm triggering the speech engine manual, but while the kaput is speak the previous SNES, I'm able to write out the next one, resulting in a smooth and even flow of speech. This illustration uses eSpeak
with... Can you do it for code? Your code one?
Oh, my code one? Sure. Yeah. That is literally what's going on in my head as I'm writing steno. So, there you go. No more questions? Alright, then I guess I will... Oh, is there one?
So I was just pulling up your website and seeing that these are sort of acrylic pieces that I glue on my keyboard.
Yeah, basically acrylic.
Do you see any prospects for maybe a little more sophisticated hardware improving things? Like
absolutely.
I mean, a lot of people are now getting hobbyist 3D printers. Do you imagine people printing out their own steno keyboards?
I was actually talking about the possibility of a Raspberry Pi-based sort of steno kit that we could sell for people to assemble. And as I said, we are also thinking about a commercial venture of just selling sort of low-cost pre-made steno machines. So yeah, there's a lot of potential in that.
I mean, you just need...
From Adafruit, maybe.
Oh, yes.
We'll see
so is it just 22 switches, basically, that you need one of these?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very simple. All right, so I guess that's it.